What's up, everyone? George Balekji here with Boston has entered the chat. But hey, check out the latest episode of Foxborough Rush, NFL draft expert for ESPN. Matt Miller stops by the show, tells us all about what's happening in the top three and also what the Patriots should do at 4 overall. And Keegan Stiefel joins Travis Thomas and myself to go over his Patriots offseason manifesto, how to improve the team. But who is a superstar we want them to trade for? Find that out on Foxborough Rush, wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple, Amazon Prime. You can also watch it on NESN's YouTube page as well. Now, let's get to the chat. Welcome in. It's Boston has entered the chat. Welcome in. When's the last time you've entered the chat? I'm going to go with the more namaste intro every once in a while. We're getting ready for the weekend. George Balekji here with Kasey Hudson. Case, how are we doing today?
Oh, we're good. Having a bit of a crisis because it's been a long week. We've had so much going on here at NESN, all of us running in different directions. So, you're excited, but also not enough caffeine in the world. Funny that you start with a namaste, though. I feel like we needed that after all of the chaos that's been NHL, Four Nations tournament. I mean, it came and closed out in Boston, so the namaste is needed. I need it.
When's the last time you've entered the chat? Well, come on in. To Boston has entered the chat. That's a nice, maybe that should be more of the Monday morning. That should be the Monday morning intro, Everyone's done with the Sunday scaries, getting back to work. Right. Busy week, crazy week. Four Nations is now behind us. So Kasey Hudson and I break down the Four Nations in a way of what's it like moving forward now, especially for the Boston Bruins, because unfortunately for us here in Boston, the Bruins were the example of worst nightmare, worst fear for teams with their players competing in this tournament, but it was obviously fantastic. Then we get into Victor Wembanyama, shut down for the season by the NBA. What does that mean for Wemby moving forward? And what does that mean for the lost opportunity for the NBA? We also talk some college football spring games and how it's a dying tradition, unfortunately. And then we wrap up with some Red Sox futures look. Garrett Crochet to win Cy Young, Alex Bregman, MVP odds. We'll talk all that and more coming up on Boston has entered the chat. Let's start with the Four Nations. Case, you love hockey. I love hockey. You love the United States of America. I, too, love the United States of America. The tournament, by all accounts, was an absolute success. It's everything the NHL wanted. You had the best players in the world representing their countries, competing in high stakes, high intensity, high octane games in two great arenas between the Bell Center and TD Garden. And it was what felt like the best type of hockey. Playoff, Stanley Cup hockey, you could even say, for the atmosphere. But the tough part for the Boston Bruins is, as they're on the outside looking in for a wild card spot as of right now, we don't know what the timetable is for Charlie McAvoy returning. So let's start with that. He has been let out of Mass General Hospital, and he is feeling better. He will be back. The timetable not known, as you see by Charlie McAvoy posting right here on his Instagram story. Free as a bird, Leonard Skinnard playing on his dash, driving down the pike, going under the city. Good that Charlie McAvoy is out of the hospital. Love that he's doing okay. He's dealing with an infection and leaves a really big mystery on his timetable. So, Kasey, with all of that, USA had a tremendous tournament. Charlie McAvoy played really well when on the ice. But the teams have to get back to reality. Why they play the guys, why they play the sport is for a Stanley Cup. And the Bruins got the worst nightmare of it all. When you leave the Four Nations tournament, Case, what do you want to see changed? Because what are the implications the Bruins are faced with McAvoy having uncertainty around him?
Great question, because for starters, you mentioned off the top, the success overall for Four Nations. And when you think about it, a number of people that we've talked to, especially interviewed here at NESN, they were like, well, at first I was either curious, I was a little reserved, I wasn't sure what to expect. I thought it was cool. It was supposed to be replacing this fun, exciting event of All-Star Week, which is always a little bit on the lighthearted side. And it turned into this Olympic fever of competition. And when you put into perspective that this is Players Olympics, this is where the players who got snubbed over the past couple of years and haven't had a chance to represent their country on their chest and go and compete, this was their moment. So that intensity ramped up immediately from the first puck drop. Leading up to all of this, I think a number of us underestimated exactly high valued and how intense this was actually going to be. With that being said, it has been insane to see the competition. It's been insane to see the press conferences and the pride and how everybody's like, it's country first right now. It's organizations after the fact. So I think that ended up being a huge hit for Four Nations. And not to mention is if you see ticket sales, I mean, the percentages in which they spiked game by game, That's always the other success to events like this. So I know they're going to be looking forward to figuring out when they're going to be able to input the next four nations. As for the implications, we got to start with the fact that I don't feel like injuries and the roster length were properly taken into account here, because you're putting a 2-week pause on an NHL season for one that typically has a 1-week pause. You're coming from a lighthearted events in the All-Star break and week and all the fun to something that ramped up to a high level of competition for international play. I thought that they would have more of a taxi squad approach to this, because we saw the chaos from the drop. Shea Theodore goes out for Canada, and then there was all these question marks as to who's going to step up. And yeah, you've got one other individual on the tail that could potentially get in the mix. But say you got 3 defensemen that got banged up in a game because the intensity was there. I don't feel like there was a proper approach to like how to manage that. Not to mention is that when you have depth, or you have that taxi squad, you can do a little bit more management of ice time. I mean, to see that some of these guys have been playing 19, 20, 22 minutes, that's NHL regular season. That's that second half of the season push, and they're putting this on the line for international play, which is important. But in the middle of a season, at the most crucial point of the season, it's very risky, to say the least. So I think that there's some things that they're going to move around in that sense. And then my other concern, George, which can't wait to hear your opinion on this, is that other international play, I've particularly seen that the guys have a little bit more time before they go back to their organizations, or it pivots into their break. This one, they have 48 hours before everyone's back at their home hockey club and hitting the ice. I mean, Thursday to Saturday, Bruins home game is on Saturday, 24 hours out, 48-hour turnaround window, and that gives you little to no time to solve any of the problems that took place over that 2-week break. So those are the top things that jumped in my mind, was roster management, probably leaning more towards a taxi squad, and that quick turnaround time coming out of the break, heading into your regular season again.
Because think about the guys, like, you look at the Boston Bruins, all right, you got the Ducks on Saturday, you get done with the Four Nations, all right, you go into your own bed. You know, you go right down the road. Think of the guys like, I mean, the simplicity of an Austin Matthews has to go back into Canada. Like the international travel, that stuff is real. Think of a Jack Eichel, has to go all the way out west. I forget exactly who the Knights are playing. For all I know, they could be playing, they're not playing the Bees, but you get my point. But no, but it's a great point to that. Like you have players, and I'm thinking USA alone, returning to Detroit, Las Vegas, Ottawa, and then even thinking with the Austin Matthews too.
How far Edmonton is.
Exactly. It's like that is such a big effect on so many ways. So to that point, I agree. Like it's also, we saw the NHL jam-pack these games into the beginning of the season. The workload they put for these guys was insane. No pro sports team is going to cut back on games because that's a cut back on money. And I understand there's a business aspect. I don't agree with it, but I understand it, right? And that's where you got to find that balance. There needs to be more grace in the scheduling. And if you're the NHL, you don't want to compete with the NBA a ton. You don't want to go too far into the summertime. But what is an earlier start to me? You have to adjust these off seasons. It's the same thing you got to battle with the Olympics. The biggest thing in all of this, to me, Case, this was the first Four Nations. It was an absolute success. You hope the league and the deciders and all this, the power brokers, make those decisions to improve it moving forward. Because start with that. The Charlie McAvoy one alone was the Minnesota Wild medical staff were the ones taking care of Team USA. This wasn't just a random array of doctors. Minnesota Wild's GM was the GM of Team USA. When the Bruins put out the statements, the two they did, to announce Charlie McAvoy was out, like they took it in their hands. Like, you're not playing. It wasn't a Team USA choice. Then this one, upon returning to Boston, he developed increasing pain, for which he was evaluated by the Bruins medical staff. They made sure to point that out. Our staff looked at him. After undergoing x-rays, MRIs, and blood work, he was diagnosed as having an infection in his right shoulder, as well as significant injury to his AC joint. They are saying all that. And the fact that they're even saying significant injury to AC joint and infection. In a sport case, we know it's all about lower body, upper body injuries, and that's all we'll ever get. When they go that far into detail, they're saying that's how bad it was, and this is how bad they effed up with the doctors. So that's a one of, what is the medical treatment like? What are the resources they have? Because you have the Minnesota Wild medical team trying to treat Charlie McAvoy in Montreal. Like, what is that like? So it goes into the planning. A player gets hurt, where do you take them? What are your plans? What's the hospital? Where do they go? And think about it like this. It was between Montreal and Boston, which made a lot of sense for the travel. Let's say the next one is going to be between Sweden and Finland. So you have to try and plan for what it would be like an international, country, cities, different type of medical work. So that's a big thing. The adjustments. I love what you bring up. The break after. This 48
Yeah.
hours is not enough, especially
Nope.
the intensity of this tournament. Like, watch those games on Saturday. It's going to be weird. The players, it's not just the physical, it's the mental and emotional toll it takes to play in a tournament like this. There
Yes.
needs to be more of an acclimation period. And then also just the simplicity of, like, for Charlie McAvoy, infections are scary. Like, good thing they caught it. Good thing they treated him. Good thing the second half of this tournament's in Boston, one of the best cities in the world for medical attention and expertise and resources. So you want to see that treatment for the players be better. Because even for the fans that may not care, if this was Adam Fox, Chris Kreider, Trocheck, New York fans are going to be livid. Opposite end, if this was Connor McDavid going back to Canada and this happened in Boston, let's say, Canadians would be livid. And that's what it is. Because it did not happen to your own guy, you simply cannot care. Tournaments like this are fantastic. The priority always has to be the athlete's case.
Yeah, you've got to have a better plan of preservation for these guys. And then if you put the shoe on the other hand, say that this tournament wasn't in Boston, say that McAvoy didn't have the option of getting home so quickly and being treated amongst, Boston's best medics and, have the team close by to get in and gauge their own personal reaction and assessment of what his injury is like. That would have dragged things out even further. But what I just can't get out of my head is the quick turnaround time. Again, I guess it was never perceived to be this big out the gate, but it was. And think about it. We have USA and Canada going at it in a championship after a bloodbath of a game on a Saturday. So the physicality is going to be there. And then you mentioned the mental aspect of it. Now you've got to flip the page, which we know hockey players are great at doing. But at the end of the day, again, 48 hours. And then Bruins specifically. Now you're without McAvoy. You're looking at the wild card window. You're on the outside looking in. You're tied up with the Blue Jackets coming out of the break. You've got Detroit in another one ahead of you. And you're down your top defenseman, who, by the way, was impactful the minute he got back on the ice. So now you're trying to make adjustments. The Ducks are not a team to sleep on. They can cost you points easily between their goaltending and their back end. So it just puts you in a crucial position and really makes you think, like, what was the conversation in terms of being like, yeah, we're going to wrap this up on a Thursday and have the schedule start back up on a Saturday. Like, that needed to be a Thursday, maybe Monday, Tuesday at max. I would say Tuesday because the big hockey nights are Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. But that's probably my biggest issue with it, because these guys were excited to represent their countries. These guys were excited to get that opportunity back. I mean, McDavid hasn't had a chance to do this in how long? So you've got so many guys that you should have assumed, like, this was an all-out moment regardless, because it's pride, it's your country, and it's really, outside of a Stanley Cup, what you play for. So I feel like that's just got a little lax in the stages of, like, everything for Four Nations. But they're going to have some time to figure it out, because we were talking about the fact that Olympics is coming, World Cup is coming, and maybe some of those things that they need to pull from to make sure that they're protecting the players at all costs.
Looking at the schedules case, the Oilers are down at Philly on Saturday. And then they're in D.C. on Sunday. You have the Edmonton Oilers coming off this tournament, playing on a Thursday night, going with a back-to-back, fresh back into the NHL. Wow. I didn't even think of this. So I think it's a great point. The back-end planning. First time this tournament's happening. Gonna give them grace. But, like, that is such a fumble. That's what's astounding about all this. So, and it's like you say, it's USA, Canada. And also at this too, like, don't get it twisted. You go out, you in this tournament, you're not flying back to wherever you got to go that night. You are celebrating your face-off, deservedly so.
So you're losing a day.
Sure, I would lose 3 days. I'd be MIA. Honestly, I'd probably ride this wave. I would be unprofessional after winning one of the biggest games of my life if I was in this situation. I wouldn't be back in touch with the team until, like, Saturday night. Like, hey, guys, just checking in. Sorry, I'm alive. I'll see you.
You wouldn't be back in touch with the team. Like, nobody can get a hold of you. That's wild. But Boston is a good place to get lost in. I mean, it's easy. Let's just say that. It's an easy place to get lost in. For you, it's an easy place to disconnect. That's what I wonder how long it takes you guys to tap back in.
I'm just taking, like, my 30th birthday celebration, and I'm just multiplying that by 3. And it wouldn't end well. Would not end well. I wouldn't be allowed to fly. That's what it would be. So, but that's the truth of the matter. But in the serious notion of it too, it's just like hockey, I feel like, is in this constant struggle case. And I'm interested in your opinion on this. One step forward, two steps back all the time. And that's what I feel like it's about, where hockey really invests in its national game broadcast. Fantastic. But then on like the Saturday before the Super Bowl, where are your games? Where are your national games? Nowhere to be found. But college basketball has it all over ESPN. And it's simple things like this: a fantastic tournament, not IIHF recognized. No one cares because of who you have playing in it, because the players care. You got to be more well prepared on the back end. That's my thing with it. So I'm interested in what you think with that. Like, I just feel like it's par for the course. As NHL does something right, where I give them all the credit in the world. The NBA has gotten dragged for the All-Star game and break, and deservedly so, and hockey's getting celebrated. I feel like this is just another case of hockey, like you're right there, and they just can't close it all out.
Yep, right on the cusp. They make these decisions that put them right in where fans are looking for the sport to grow, and then the retraction comes. And I think some of it might be fear, because I'm glad you mentioned the whole like Saturday before Super Bowl. It's like we don't want to compete with that. Well, there's ways to compete if you strategize accordingly, because on the day before, everyone, especially, Americans, are waiting for the biggest game of the season. They don't know what else to watch. You only got a couple people that want to watch documentaries or go back and dizzy themselves with the back end of the season. But outside of that, what are we all doing? Binge watching Netflix. We're looking for things to do. We're probably taking that time to finally go do something that, our boyfriends or girlfriends and want to do, and spend time doing something else where that could be an opportunity to be like, hey, look at us. Hockey can compete. Hockey can intrigue you. Hockey can bring in new fans. So sometimes I feel like it's fear, or it's just kind of like, better not. And they have to eliminate that approach so that they can finally continue to grow the sport and not do the 2 steps forward and 2 steps back. Because in every category, once it gets uncomfortable, then the NHL tends to backtrack a little bit, and they have to push through that discomfort. Those big days right before the top American sports and stuff, they have an opportunity there, because I promise you, for the most part, people are like, Super Bowl is exhausting. I'm not going to wear myself out today before I wear myself out tomorrow's marathon. Like, I'll watch some hockey. I'll participate in something different and something new. So I agree with you 100% on that. And with a number of things that the NHL does, they just tend to, better not, don't rock the boat, don't do this, don't do that, where it's like you've got to push through the discomfort, because the new fans are there and they want to engage and they want to meet you on the other side of what you keep just kind of stepping back and stepping away from. And a lot of it's breaking down the intimidation barriers in hockey. I can say one of my favorite things about doing hockey coverage of the past couple of years is when I get messages and people are like, this looks exciting, but I don't understand what's going on. And some people don't take the time to explain it to them. So putting that more in the mix of things, like, you feel like you're dumbing it down, but you're not changing the culture of the sport. You're just welcoming more people in.
Yeah, it's like the gatekeepers, right? Like I hate gatekeepers in any sort of sport, especially as how sports fandom has become modernized to you attach yourself to an individual. Maybe a city, just like you can be like Boston has a lot of imports in a way. Like you and I are both not from here. You're from Florida. I'm from New Jersey. But and given what we do, obviously, and I grew up a Rangers fan, but that doesn't mean I don't root for the Bruins. Like whatever city I've lived in, I want the majority of the people to be in the best mood possible. Yeah. Celtics, Red Sox, Bruins, Patriots. I want them to win everything. Revs, I don't care. I'm saying that in a way of like, you have people that relocate, and in your more forming years, get out of college, you're 23, you go to a different city. That's when all of a sudden, if you go to a hockey city like a Boston, all of a sudden you're looking around like, all right, cool, I like this, let's go. But they're the people that gatekeep in certain ways. Yep. Where there needs to be the exposure, and I think you got to make it easy on people to find the biggest games and the biggest stars. And I think that's where the NHL comes up short. This is why you do it, though. This made it easy. TNT, ESPN every night. It's all over. You have good breaks in between the games where the hype is built up. The NHL is given a golden goose that it's Canada, USA. And think about the league case. Majority of the teams are in USA. It's a Canadian sport. Majority of the teams in the NHL are now in the USA. And it's just, in a way, you're limiting your fan base in a country where it's football first, second, and third. And then I honestly don't know what's fourth. And that's where like they need to improve. And it goes into the aftermath of it too. Let your players ease their way back in. The simple thing, Case, the NHL, if it goes 7 games, the Stanley Cup is June 24th. It's a Monday. Slide it back 2 days. You're telling me that couldn't be June 26th on a Wednesday? So
Right.
you have players' first games. They play Four Nations on a Thursday. And instead of Saturday, their first game back is a Sunday. That's a day of travel, 2 days of acclimation, and then go. Like, it's
100%.
Are you going to run for commissioner? Could I be your scheduling consultant? Could I be your right-hand person?
I would hire you because at least we're on the same page initially. That's for sure. Because you're right. Just adding in those couple of days are not a big deal. Or moving the start back just a little bit. Like there's wiggle room in where they can finesse this. Like I understand the honoring of certain holidays. They do practice and stuff on Thanksgiving, but there's just ways around this where they can get that extra game in throughout the schedule to make sure that they give them the right turnaround time coming out of something like this. Because you said it. Four Nations was a success. This is something that fans are going to want to see again. And who knows how it'll grow, depending on safety, depending on conversations between countries, it could be more than, Four Nations, or they can rotate something else out. So this can change in a number of ways where they can make it bigger and maximize off of what they just did. But the time and the planning is really going to have to go into it because it almost went into that format where they were playing every other night a couple years ago, right after the COVID season, the 52 game season, to be more specific. Yep. They started this on Wednesday. It's wrapping up on a Thursday. It's condensed play. That's where I just realized that the logistics had to come in sharper in terms of like, you can't turn around and be back playing with your hockey club moments later. And then you bring in the celebration aspect of it. And it's just like the mental, like there's just too many things here. But the biggest concern is like, no guy has a chance to kind of heal from injury. And I do worry about the Bruins because depending on McAvoy's situation, look at their next 5 games, You got the Islanders where they're not the sexiest team out there, but their goaltending is stout and has kept them in a number of games. And they could be problematic in that sense of eliminating scoring opportunities. And Bruins don't really have the depth scoring that they need to compete at the moment. They're still figuring out those pieces. You and I talked about that throughout the week. Then you've got the Maple Leafs. Well, that's terrifying. I told you we can't underestimate the Ducks. They've had some quality upsets throughout the season. So you've got a number of teams that can push away those points. And then last season, coming out of All-Star break, coming out of a fun break, the Bruins only won 1 of their 5 games coming out of that break. So it's concerning to think that you're going to lose somebody who is a great anchor in getting things moving along. Now, we'll see who else steps up. That's always going to be the big question mark because it's going to also help some solvability heading into this NHL deadline. But it just puts too many teams at risk when you're thinking about everything else. Like you mentioned, the travel time and the travel space of a lot of these other players that don't have the ability to be getting treated in Boston and then turning around and playing in Boston.
Same thing even with the Leafs. You're going to have Austin Matthews go from Boston to home to Toronto, then out to Chicago, and that's a back-to-back Saturday-Sunday split. Then he comes to Boston on a Tuesday. So he's what is he playing? 3 games by Sunday in 4 days. Gets 2 days off, and then Friday, it's Hudson Balekji 2026, guys. That's what it's going to be. Gary Bettman.
We've got NHL. You covered.
We're just here for you. That's all it is. I'm going to offer my support. I just want to be that guy in the back of the room when they're like, all right, we're good. I go, hey, let's give them 2 more days off. Let's
think this through a little bit more. Yeah. And you can do so in your Monday morning drive-in namaste voice because nobody's going to say no to that. They're going to hear you loud and clear. Well, maybe not loud, but they're going to hear you clearly and wholeheartedly.
I'll find a way to be loud. That's how it always goes. Speaking of Four Nations, if you want more from the Four Nations coverage, check out the Hockey Hub, wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple, Amazon Music. It's also on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch as well. Hockey Hall of Famer Jeremy Roenick joined the show, and he shared his outlook on hockey, his opinion on the Kachucks. Check that out, of course. And always, always, always check it out on YouTube as well. All right, Case, let's get into what's trending. This is something that excites me immensely. It's opposite of namaste for me because I'm fired up about it. Drake may have accidentally revealed the Patriots are going to have new throwbacks. Check out Drake May when he was on Chris Long's Greenlight podcast.
Here's my burning question about the Pats. I think y'all should wear those reds every game.
Those reds are sweet, aren't
they sweet?
They're sweet. We're 0-2 in them, but I thought we played pretty good in them. But the reds are sweet. I think they're maybe coming out with maybe is what kind of the fans are wanting, some blue, some throwback blues.
Oh, really?
Those would be sweet.
I love the reds.
The fans are wanting it, so I think that'd be pretty sick.
The fans, everybody wants them. This is dual for me, Case. One, the Patriots have the worst jerseys in all of pro sports. Like, it sucks. Blue on blue, when it's just a simple tweak of bringing back the silver pants was fantastic. But it's just like blue on blue with zero creativity and zero design. If what Drake May is talking about is they're like late 1990s, big flying Elvis, I don't even know a shade of blue, but the white with the red numbering, and they modernize it a little bit. You got to tweak it a little to modernize it. But if they're bringing this back, we're looking at 2 to 3 games in the Reds, 2 to 3 games in these. 6 games down. I only got to deal with the ugly Patriots jerseys the other life. I'm all for this. I am all for this. I absolutely love it. The Patriots, who have had the worst jerseys in the NFL since they debuted them, finally getting it right.
We got to throw that one up for a vote. Although I don't disagree. Like, the hideousness has been there. You mentioned the modernization, though. Like, they don't really have to throw that on the jersey. They could put that in the helmet. We're seeing teams kind of make all the modern high-end things go up on the helmet and then everything else be a simplification, but don't oversimplify it. I'm a big fan of this because of the options that they have with the vintage looks and the vintage appeals. But more importantly, what better season to do it? Like, adding it in now when the Patriots have so much like on their back in terms of fan excitement. How are they going to build out this team? You've got a lot of money to build out this team, for one. You got this new coaching staff for two. And then you're heading into a season where you might be a little underestimated, but you can sneak in the mix of a couple of things because of the money. And then, of course, you're going to pull in more money because fans are always looking for that extra option and that vintage, that throwback, that change up in the look. That's exactly how you're going to get something of that magnitude. So I think from all angles here, because you're going to get fans invested outside of how they build out this team with all the money that they have to bring in some key pieces to help out immediately. But the look, I say modernize the helmet. Don't go too crazy. I love the two Patriot heads on the shoulder that are massive.
Yeah, it'd be like a red face mask. That's all they got to tweak, which is great. Still the silver helmets.
See, there you go. Like, not much has to go on, but before you know it, it's a whole fire uniform that they've pieced together. But I think this is a season to do it and release that.
No, I love that point. New head coach, Drake May, year 2. And with that all, too, it's just like the Seahawks did it. And I think those are the best jerseys in football. This one for the Patriots, obviously in the 90s, they absolutely stunk aside from the Super Bowl appearance. You bring it back. There's the old Patriots fans. Thank you, Buzzer. They're the old Patriots fans. They're like, the 90s, don't bring it back. I don't want to see that. But the new ones are going to go, what are these? I am buying them because they are sick. The Drake May, the 10s. You're going to see a lot of Ty Laws, Ben Coates. You'll see a lot of Drew Bledsoe's, friend of the program. Love you, Drew. And you're going to see a lot of Drake May 10s out there, too.
You know what's funny? My first jersey ever was a Drew Bledsoe jersey.
Hey, didn't know that. Save that for another combo when we're talking jerseys.
Oh, I will.
What team? Patriots?
Yeah. My brother-in-law is from the area, so.
Smart guy. He knew what he was doing. All right, talking MLB. More excitement. I love this one, too. Modernization. Automated ball strike challenge made its MLB spring training debut. Check out this video if you're watching on your screen. So we see the pitch there, and this is coming from the Padres spring training. What ABS challenges, each team starts a game with 2 challenges. Only the batter, pitcher, or catcher can challenge a call. The challenge must be instantly. Like, I'm talking within seconds of the ball strike call by the ump. And if you win it, you keep your challenge. If you lose it, you lose it. You don't get it back. The best part case, though, is that this challenge goes down in about 10 seconds. I want to picture fans, anyone, when you're watching like Wimbledon, and there's a calling out, it's challenged. You see the graphic, it goes in, ball's in, and literally like a fraction of it's in the line, and it's called in. That's how quick this happens. It's being tested with MLB in spring training right now. Earliest debut will be 2026, but this is exciting because it doesn't take away the umpire aspect, in my opinion. They're there for the out, safe, call at home play. They are there for all the crazy rules in MLB. It's unfair to the umpires, who I'm always critical of, that everyone in the ballpark, everyone watching knows what a ball and a strike is, except for the guy that calls it. So I think it's brilliant. What do you think of this?
I think it's going to help the job for umpires, just like you said. My only question, and maybe I'm comparing it too much to football, so help me out here, is if it tends to slow down an already paced game at all. You know, like, I like that it has the 2 challenges. It doesn't get retracted.
But
like
10 seconds, though. That's
okay.
I'm telling you, it's like 10, 15. Yeah. It's not an NFL or NBA. It is simple. Like, again, tennis, the tech on the line out, and that's it, and you move on.
And then you're moving on. Well, then, yeah, I'm a big fan of it because you always want to have that precision. We see it. I'm glad you compared it to tennis because we see it in tennis all the time where it's like that game, you cannot mess up something that's this close because in all reality, the point goes to, and then the margin is just so narrow for these things. So I'm always about adding precision to the game. I like the 2 challenges and the fact that if one gets docked, you don't get penalized for it, because you have to be able to have that space and opportunity for the correction there. And it's just going to add to everything. So I like the value of it. My only question, are fans going to get pissed if it's like you got the 2 challenges, it slows down the pace of an already paced game there. But if it's that quick, then no, then we get to enjoy it. And umpires get to get some people off their back, because that's the most frustrating and stressful thing. My dad was an umpire for Air Force's baseball team, and he was always catching so much heat for any little situation. And some of it's like, it's not in my hands, but everyone's pissed off at you. So hopefully this makes it a little bit more enjoyable for umpires.
Umpiring anything, baseball, softball, toughest gig there is. I have refereed basketball. I've reffed wrestling because I wrestled in high school. Umpiring baseball, softball is brutal. The parents are on top of you, and they think because of that fence they can say whatever they want to, let alone in MLB games, right? Like when little Johnny gets struck out, and he did. He sent him home looking, and they give you crap.
Parents are piping along.
See, and
it's like I grew up playing soccer, so referees got like death threats in England and stuff. So like my mom's side of the family, they knew about that, and I was just like, nah, never something I'd be interested in. Like my volunteer hours have to go elsewhere.
It's as simple of like, you wouldn't talk to me that way if you're passing me on the sidewalk. That fence doesn't give you that ability. Do a little jab step to him. All right, to the NBA, Victor Wembanyama. Let's take a moment, everyone. Out for the remainder of the season. Deep vein thrombosis in his right shoulder, also known as a version of blood clots. He's expected to be fine, but the San Antonio Spurs are shutting him down for the season. Wemby was halfway through his second full season in the NBA, averaging 24 points, 11 rebounds, almost 4 blocks a night, was the sheer favorite to win Defensive Player of the Year. What gets me the most with this, Casey, the Spurs just traded for De'Aaron Fox, didn't give up their young core. They're just on the cusp of being a play-in team. And what would have been perfect for the NBA is they get in. He's playing in nationally broadcast games. They could very well win a series. And then just the more Wemby exposure, the more Wemby hype happens. And by next season, he would have been is he the 3rd best player in the NBA? Like that would have happened. We're robbed of one of the best players in basketball. We're robbed of a very young, very exciting player that cares a lot. And the NBA itself is robbed of a big opportunity. I'm happy they're taking the right precautions, shutting him down. This just sucks. That's just what it is. Like they did the right thing. You can't hate them for that. I hate that it happened. That's what it is for me.
Yeah, it's one of those things. And then, of course, the timing of it, like you're locked in and all you're seeing right now is a potential postseason. And then you get news like this. And then, of course, you got the support around the league of people just saying how like unfortunate this is and how bad they feel for him. I mean, Chris Bosh released a statement. Serena Williams released a statement because they know how this goes and they know how this process can then potentially turn out. So really, really glad that the organization did the right thing and say we're not going to risk it. But you said it. I mean, to be in the midst of the season that he's in, and then the minute that the trade stuff started going down, everybody was looking to him to be that key factor to either level up the team, to still be an engine for this team. I mean, was he leading the NBA in block shots? Like, it wasn't just the defensive element, it was ability to help get attacks and stuff going. So moving a piece like that, and I'm pretty sure the Spurs' depth at center is now going to be even more jeopardized because you have Charles, who was kind of in and out when it comes to his ability to play as well. So I wonder if this is going to cause for any other movement to keep them in any sort of playoff conversation. But the timing of all things, I mean, I'm sure it's already gone through his head 100 times. It's like you've already started looking and focusing on the postseason. Now you have to focus on something that's out of your control. And I mean, blood clots are very out of your control when you think about it. You have to figure out if you're compatible with medication. You have to figure out how you're going to minimize situations without irritating anything else or having any sort of flare-ups. And then once you're in the clear, you're still being monitored to make sure that nothing comes against you to make it even worse. So I feel terrible for him, but he's got a lot of people he can look to see and walk him through this process. But you said it. I mean, it's going to jeopardize statistics, and it's going to take him out of certain conversations that he deserves to be high up in.
Yeah, you take a 7'4" alien who's not just a shot blocker, he's a shot eraser where guys get around the rim and don't attempt because of him. And you slide like maybe a Jeremy Sochan, it's like 6'8". It changes the dynamic of the team, and that's what stinks.
Yep.
And at best, with the trade deadline passed, they go with a 2-way contract guy for another team. Maybe they get someone from, I have no idea where
they just try to survive. Yeah. And it depends on if they put themselves in a hole with that. Yeah.
Changes the whole dynamic of the team. And this was a team that like you wanted that playoff experience for them to get to that level and learn what it takes to just play in a series, especially while Chris Paul is still on the team. that type of experience is so valuable, especially with how young Wemby is. For more on both Victor Wembanyama and Bobby Portis Jr., his suspension happened, be sure to check out today's episode of Hold My Banner. You can hear about your Boston Celtics, everything going on around the NBA on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, wherever else you get your podcast. That's Hold My Banner, hosted by Travis Thomas and Ante Campbell. All right, this is a big one, Case. What's your alma mater again? You went to school down in Florida? UCF?
UCF. Yeah.
Did you go to the spring game?
Yes, the spring game was a whole thing, but I had to go between the spring game at UCF. But when I first got into school, I was driving up to Tallahassee to go to the spring games at FSU because my brother was playing.
Oh, wow. Did not know that. That's awesome on your brother playing at
So it was a whole
Florida State.
thing.
Look, I went to Seton Hall basketball school. And that's kind of doing a disrespect to like actual basketball schools. I love my alma mater. I love Shaheen Holloway. I just wanted to see back just being a serious program. Every Saturday, I would sit around the TV with my friends at college, and we'd be watching college football, and we'd go, why did we not go to a college football school? And ask you about the spring game, because that's a fun part. See the team, it's excitement, it's accessibility, it's a free game for people that can't afford it. But Texas and USC have joined Nebraska and your brother's alma mater, Florida State, canceling their spring football games. So we saw this in an article of ESPN, and even Steve Sarkisian, he spoke about it on Up and Adams with Kay Adams. Here's Sark on why he's canceling the spring game for Texas.
Should I be making plans to come back since I'm a fan now, to the spring game? Is that
a spring practice? You want to come to spring
Are we
practice?
not having a spring game?
No, we're not going to have a spring game.
Wow, breaking news. You're the best coach, sir. And we're just
Well, I think a couple reasons why. Over the last 2 years, we've played 30 games.
Yeah,
and that's a lot for college football. Yes. 14 2 years ago, 16 this year. And I just mentioned we've had 25 guys get invited to the NFL Combine the last 2 years. So we've got a lot of young players on our roster. We have 21 mid-year high school kids that just showed up. And so the development that's needed for these guys to get ready for the fall is a little bit different than it used to be. And so our approach is going to be a little bit more NFL-driven, kind of more of an OTA style early on. And as we grow into more of the scrimmage formats in the second half of spring ball, that I just don't know rolling the ball out, playing the game when we only get 15 practices is the best for us to maximize the opportunities that we get. So it's going to be a little bit of different approach, but I think college football is changing right now. Yeah. And we need to do a great job as coaches of adapting to college football. And that's what we're trying to do. And I think it's going to be good for our team.
So Steve Sarkisian, head coach of Texas football, and he's right, Casey. They come off a run where they ended their season against A&M, played an SEC championship game, then played in college football playoff. So there is, as we were talking about to open, it's the same thing. From a player health perspective, and to Sark's point too, it's a player preparation standpoint. You have young guys, they only get like 15 actual full practices now in the springtime. That's valuable. So you eliminate a spring game, it goes that way. What do you think of that? Texas, these are power brokers in college football. And they're all saying spring game no more. And it's gotten out of their hands with more games, which we want. I wanted the 12-team college football playoff. I loved it. I wanted to go expansion. But now no spring games, which is such a rich tradition, especially for a place like Nebraska. Like that is it. That's all they got out there. So what do you think of this happening now in college sports?
Well, you mentioned a key thing off the top. It's the fact that like the spring game is one of the few games that anybody can go to. Anybody can get that college football experience, and you can do it at an affordable manner. So that is kind of like, that stings to lose that opportunity. But when it comes to kind of, I don't know, the theme of the day, protecting your players, you have to think of a number of things. I know some people are like, oh, spring game is where we see what the depth chart's going to look like for these rosters coming up. But no, that's training camp in the summer. Like, spring is to see where the conditioning is on the guys, which means top to bottom, you're checking out everybody's conditioning. I could also say that, like, for my brother's team, FSU being one of the teams that are in the mix of this, like, a lot of surgeries are taking place once they finally close out their season in December and January. So like the healing journey is supposed to be the point of emphasis then. And then you're gearing up and getting ready for this spring game. And the spring game is now turning into this whole circus of everything else. So kind of taking the affordability and the fan experience out of it. that timeline in which players can get healthy. Some players have to get crucial surgeries, and you have to think about the timeline of heading into training camp and trying to be healthy. I can understand why they want to do that, but you're talking about top programs who have been embedded in the tradition of spring games and adding all of the other fun elements to it. So from a fan perspective, it stinks. From a player protection, I love it.
Yeah, that's where it's just what's best. And like some interesting quotes, Matt Rule, when he spoke about it, he said it's really because last year they were on one of the more televised spring games, and he dealt with a lot of people offering his players NIL basically just from watching them on TV. Mike Norvell of Florida State said it's really because last year we were one of the more I mixed up a double. Oh, look at that! Look at my great note taking. Then a USC source. Let me go to that one. He said the biggest purpose was that a spring game actually serves now as a fan engagement tool, but we just think we can engage fans in a better way. So USC's looking money. Matt Rule is looking at it from the part of like, my guys were getting poached. And you like when serious teams like this that like fill out their stadiums make this type of decision, that's how you know it's a serious thing too. And yeah, it's like, what did I look up? I think I looked up Texas. Cheapest nosebleed seats, $200 a pop. Think about those little kids that love Texas football, and this is their one shot for someone to afford to bring their family to a game, and it's gone now. That's what stinks. It's one of those, it makes sense. You hope there's a different way of fan engagement. You can still pack the stadium, kind of do a skills challenge thing, maybe a flag football thing. Don't televise it. Make it more of an engaging part with the fans beyond the game, which we'll see how that's how you challenge the marketing teams of these universities and these athletic departments. How do you make it engaging, you know? But that's when you see those quotes, guys getting poached, others saying that, you know, they just need to cancel it altogether. For business standpoints, it just kind of makes sense, which stinks. It's the new times. It's NIL, it's transfer portal, and some new times.
It's changing everything. And like, honestly, when you paint the picture that way, do a spring pep rally. I mean, if it's about the fans and if it's about tradition and it's about school spirit, like there's so much you could do with pep rallies these days. Do a spring pep rally and then of course do your fall pep rally. But now putting into perspective the NIL and the transfer portal has gotten a bit out of control. It helped because college football had to be stabilized after COVID. I mean, that was really stressful to watch those first 2 seasons coming out of COVID. But now it's just getting a little out of hand with the money involvement and everything. And then when you look at the poaching opportunities and the fact of how you can bait players into wanting to go to different teams, I mean, it's problematic. And I didn't think about the fact that the spring game can be the stage in which people are just sitting here looking in saying like, yeah, this is a player we can offer a sweet deal to or entice with NIL or entice with his ability to come into these schools. Because also look at how many players were jumping on the transfer portal and like didn't find that level of success or excitement or playing time that they were originally looking for because they didn't focus on the system that they decided to hop over to. They just saw the NIL and they kind of got blinded by it. So maybe taking the spring game off the table will kind of help stabilize some things and put this in perspective for players when it comes to the transfer portal and when it comes to the enticement of NIL.
Yeah, that's a big part of it all. It's like they're still struggling to find their stabilization, like you put it. And when you go from that standpoint, it's something that stinks to lose. In the grand scheme of things, it's not like the biggest loss. Because even, I finally looked it up. I corrected my notes here, Case, by the way. And sorry to our listeners. I'm just a rook here.
Talk to
Mike
me.
Mike Norvell's point, too, he's like, I'm putting a lot of info out there. It's a televised game. Guys pick it up. And he's also, again, with the state of the portal, you're teaching these guys something. You're implementing a playbook, and they could be gone. And to also the same thing, I'm not going to waste a day at a spring game if I'm not going to make it productive. Less practices means coaches have to be as efficient as possible and as opportunistic with every day they get with the players in the offseason because only have 15 practices to help protect the players. For everything you want Patriots in their offseason, 4th overall pick, new head coach, who was a head coach before and a player, and Drake May entering year 2, check out Foxborough Rush. Wherever you get your podcasts, we got new episodes dropping every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Just this last week alone, we had Alex Barth and Matt Miller join the show. We always have great guests. Go watch old episodes on Nesson's YouTube page as well. That's Foxborough Rush, wherever you get your podcasts and wherever you like to watch them as well. All right, let's talk some MLB, Case. So we're hitting around, you, me, our producer, Ethan, and he looked at me and he goes, the Red Sox World Series odds, 22-1. He's like, that's the 8th longest shot, which says a lot. You'd think it'd be longer than 8.
Yeah.
But pointed that out, 22-1. Massive number. People are going to go, hey, Crochet, Bueller, Houck, Bregman, right? They're going to do all this. Christian Campbell catching some steam maybe. What do you make of that? A long shot like that, but not that long when you think it's 8th best odds to win the World Series.
I think that it tells you how the impact of Bregman joining this team matters. I think back to the interview you and I just did, last week, when Devin was like, this is a World Series team, hands down. And a lot of people were like, whoa, don't go too crazy here. But the pieces are there. The compete is going to be possible. And yeah, you're looking ahead at what the Yankees and the Oilers will do. But more importantly, a lot of people, sorry, New York fans, they feel like the Yankees just have this potential choke ability towards the stretch here. The Oilers, you're going to have some questions around that, but Red Sox being on the cusp there, look at the way that they lost games and what games they lost last season. And then more importantly, what I was seeing most of and hearing most of was just they didn't show up in the second half of the season. So these minor corrections, they're adding to where they were at their weakest points. I'm not surprised that it's sitting at 8th. I am kind of surprised from the hype around it all that it didn't jump up just a little bit more, but that's worth a sprinkle of anything because we saw kind of how NFL futures played out and how those teams sitting in that 6th, 7th, 8th spot were the teams to thrust ahead.
Yeah, and it's also when you look at the numbers, like Dodgers, I'm looking at FanDuel, plus 240, Yankees 7-1. So even that drop off, the numbers are telling you, if there's a difference of almost 500 whole dollars between the Dodgers and the Yankees, the Dodgers are the heavy favorite. Then it's Yankees 7-1, Braves plus 900, Phillies 11-1, Astros just ahead of the Sox 20-1, and then Red Sox 22-1. I wouldn't bet World Series win. I don't think they're there yet. And it's the Dodgers on the other side of it all.
Yeah.
What's intriguing to me and what caught my eye, and I did already bet it, Red Sox to win the AL is 10-1. It kind of sounds insane. But let's face it, the Yankees have Judge, who's 33. Cody Bellinger's about to be 30. Giancarlo Stanton, you can't bet on his health. Great 1-2 in the rotation, of course, and Garrett Cole and Max Fried. One of the best closers in baseball in Devin Williams. But this is the same Yankees team, and you apologize to the fans. I think they already feel bad for themselves because the Yankees just extended Aaron Boone. Brian Cashman isn't going anywhere. It's the same dip and jack lineup. Home runs are bust. Aaron Judge are bust. Not sweating the Yankees. The Astros, very productive lineup. Altuve, Paredes, Yordan Alvarez, Christian Walker, Framber Valdez, Hunter Brown. And then the Orioles, very deep. Not as explosive as the Astros. Those are the teams in front of them. But, it's it is open. And injuries be damned for anyone. 10-1, I like that number just because you have Garrett Crochet, who's a moose and could be a workhorse. Let's see. You have Walker Buehler, who's absolute big gamer when it comes to for the Red Sox. So what, Tanner Houck's going to be your 3? And let's see what happens with Garrett Whitlock. What do you do with him? Bullpen, starting pitching. When does he get back? Lucas Giolito. And then how this lineup goes, how deep they are, and how much they've raised their defensive floor. And the jump you get from guys like a Jarren Duran, whose confidence is going to be in the roof. Ceddanne Rafaela now has a full season behind him. Tristan Casas, can he be healthy again? For the Red Sox to win the AL, I think that's a lot more realistic conversation to have, a lot more fun conversation to have as well, because it's well within their grasp. And it's when you look at the landscape of the American League and the best teams in that, the margin feels big just because you have the Red Sox, who haven't made the playoffs 5 of the last 6 years, haven't been in the postseason since 2021. But you can mess around and you get in and anything happens at that point. The AL 10-1, I made the bet because I like it, and that's a number I like too.
Definitely like that over the World Series. Like I said, Devin mentioned it and there was a lot of reaction to it. Big fan of the confidence. But something else that he said why I like choosing the AL versus anything else is the young guys, the guys who have been developed, the guys who might get the tap on the shoulder to come in and help this Red Sox team. There's a lot to look forward to there. And Devin mentioned it. This is something where they can come into the mix and we don't know when and where. So some reports or some things that I was reading was mentioning maybe coming in and helping in the second half of the season, which was a slump against them last year. So I think it's more computable. And like you said, those teams and the way that you laid it out, we don't know how the Yankees are going to play out. We don't know how they're going to mentally feel after this whole Juan Soto situation. And we don't know how that's going to ripple through their room and their play and those clutch moments and everything where they kind of fell short just a smidge. And I know you say, look at how far they got in the postseason. They didn't fall short. Yeah, but pulling that into this season can change everything. So the dynamic of the Astros can change. So I like where they're at because there's a lot of hope and excitement, and there could be potential depth and development when it comes to this Red Sox roster.
Yeah, and that's where you have two guys, L Rookie of the Year odds. Christian Campbell 5-1, Roman Anthony plus 850. Alex Bregman loves both of them. Christian Campbell's a guy too. The number is a good one. He could end up playing second or left for the Red Sox this season. So two very important positions for them defensively. He has a great swing. He's a righty bat. He doesn't hit the long, lofty fly balls, but he's going to be ripping doubles off the green monster, getting on base. He has a frame. He kind of has a pedigree to him. And he hasn't played a lot of second in the minors, but that's a position that he played majority of the time at Georgia Tech, now majority of time in the Red Sox farm system. And you put a Christian Campbell with his type of swing in a lineup with the guys that will be around him. He can be protected as a rookie. And defensively, when you're learning from a Trevor Story, an Alex Bregman, as a hitter from a Rafael Devers, from a Tristan Casas, from a Connor Wong, like that does a lot. From a Jarren Duran, that does a lot for this kid. So that's what brings into it. It is the influx of youth, and it's the leaders they got as vets as well. She's Kasey Hudson. I'm George Balekji. This was Boston Has Entered the Chat. Appreciate you guys making us a part of your day. Make sure to catch new episodes every Monday through Friday, wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple, Amazon Music. You could also watch it on NESN's Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube page as well. Go to NESN's YouTube, hit the subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, leave a comment. Do you think the Yankees? Do you think the Red Sox? Yankees aren't going to win the AL. What do you like of the Red Sox chances to win the American League? She's Kasey Hudson. I'm George Balekji. Have a good one, everyone.